two guys walked into a bar. All right, good evening. It is Wednesday, January 14th. I'll call the Kaiser Planning Commission to order. Second order of business is going to be the approval of the November 25 minutes. I want to point out that Dawn put a corrected version of the minutes in front of you. So just to note that in the previous one that was in the packet, it said youth counselor or youth liaison was not present, although she was actually noted in the present. And so the corrected version removes that youth liaison not present, and there's no other substantive changes. So with that, can I get a motion on the minutes, please?
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Scruggs and a second by Commissioner Grentz to approve as amended. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously with one absent. We have nobody signed up tonight for appearance of interested persons, so that's pretty standard. New old business staff report, Planning Commission work plan for 2026. Shane, you're missing your co-captain.
I am, yes. Yeah. Dina will be back next month. Yeah, so tonight, first, well, Happy New Year, everybody. I know it's a couple late weeks in, and I don't know what the rule is on when you can stop wishing people Happy New Year, but I live.
August.
Really?
Yeah.
August, okay. I live by the rule that is, it's when I see them in the first of the new year. So, not Happy New Year to you, Counselor Duran, because I have seen you, but I think all the rest of you, I don't know that I've seen y'all. Oh, shoot, I can't. Commissioner Scruggs, not Happy New Year to you either, because I did see you last week. Oh, dang it. So a bunch of you, I can't say Happy New Year to, sorry.
Happy New Year to some and the rest.
Yeah, whatever. But for those of you that have been with us for a while, historically, our January meeting, we always kind of do a little bit of a housekeeping, look at the quote-unquote work plan. I don't really like that term, but that's somehow that stuck years ago, and we keep using it. It's really about, it gives an opportunity for Planning Commission to look at, hey, here's some of the things we've identified as staff that we think we're going to be doing this next year, and they're never accurate. It's pretty fun. It's like projecting the future. It's always wrong because other things come up, and then we do things that we didn't think we were going to have to do. But it gives an opportunity for us to share with you all kind of what we see as our next year and what we're going to be focusing time and attention as the Planning Commission on. And then also really my favorite part is, what are the things that you all would want us to focus on that are not on this list? So it's in the packet, pretty straightforward. We don't really adopt a work plan, so there really isn't a motion necessary to say, oh, we're adopting this work plan. It really is a consensus-based thing, and it's intended to be just a conversation with you all. So y'all know I'm a pretty informal guy. So feel free to interrupt me at any time, ask questions at any time, but I kind of figure we can just kind of walk through it. I think we have the potential, I'm not going to even say it out loud, but we have the potential for this meeting to be a great meeting tonight.
It's always a great meeting.
Yeah, and yeah, so we'll get right, that's what I'm not saying out loud. That's not what I'm saying out loud. I'm not saying that out loud.
Insinuated, Jeremy.
So anyway, like I said, we have the list. I'll kind of just run through at a high level the items on that list and give opportunities if you have questions on them. The first little grouping of things, that's the CFEC stuff, the climate-friendly areas or climate-friendly and equitable communities rules. You'd think after however many years we've been dealing with CFEC rules that I would know that, like I do. I'm in denial still sometimes. So we have a few things that are around those rules that we actually are going to have to be doing this year. Some of them I've pushed deadlines out as far as we can, and we're running up against them. So the first one on that list is the adoption of the climate-friendly areas. We've been talking climate-friendly areas for like 3 years. We've already kind of identified where those are going to go. That's that Lock Haven Center and the Shamawa Center. As a commission, I think in 2023, it was determined we weren't going to go towards the Cherry Center with it because of some of the equity concerns and some of the low mod income and possible displacement problems. But we have technically not had to adopt those as of yet because we got an extension to get through some of the other work. And so our deadline is coming up at the end of June. So at some point, we're going to actually have to formally adopt those, and so they'll kind of be yes.
Remind me, so this is the CFAs, but this is the major dense areas, yes?
Yes, a little, well, they're not that major compared to I'll give you kind of like the Cliff Notes version. We did a CFA study a few years ago. We got grant funding to do that. The COG helped us with that. We crunched a lot of data. We looked at a lot of
9,500 units.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Something like that.
So I mean, that's pretty dense. But did we ever clarify whether or not those two nodes was enough? Because I think there was some ambiguity. Okay.
We did. Yes. No. Okay. We did basically clarify that with those couple tweaks. Okay. Which we would have to increase allowed building height by 10 feet, I believe.
That's right.
And I think that we had to increase the allowed density by like 2 units or 4 units an acre of what our max is currently. Because remember, it's not about what actually has to be built, it's what can be built.
Right.
And so it was basically a function of doing an analysis on what is the capacity of those areas. So The good news for us was because of the work we had done way back in 2018 with the revitalization plan, we were like 95% there. But it will require us doing some changes to our development code. There's some text amendments that have to be, there's some things that have to be cleaned up. There's also, it needs to be referenced in our comprehensive plan officially. So that's coming this year. The second one on the list is the regional scenario planning work. Oh, yes.
Sorry, before we move on, can I make what may be a little bit of a task of staff, a request of staff, but when this, the climate friendlies, the CFEC stuff comes back before us?
Yeah.
Could you identify the previous meeting dates?
Yeah.
That we had those
100%.
hearings, so if we choose to, we can go back and
Yes.
rewatch those?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's, yeah, I kind of had planned on that would probably be in the staff report to point back to those where decision points were made, especially the decision point by planning commission where we had a formal motion that said, these are the two areas we want to designate. The one thing I will say is we've been using that information as we've been doing other planning work, like the next one on the list is the regional scenario planning work that has been going on for a while also. Too long. But we'd used that known commodity that this is where our CFAs are in doing that modeling work. So that the next one on the list is the regional scenario planning work. It's not really a task for planning commission. I mean, it hasn't really ever been a task for us, but it's been on the list for the last couple of years as we've been going through it to make you aware of it. This actually will be going to city council at our next council meeting, the scenario plan document. The regional scenario plan that was developed through input from the TAC and the consultant group. So it's going to be going before council, so everybody gets to see it. It's been published on the website since right around Thanksgiving, I believe. And basically, staff is asking council for authorization to submit the study to DLCD because felt like that was an appropriate thing to do. There's nothing statutorily that says we have to do that, but we just felt like that was probably a good idea, which Salem's doing the same thing. They're going to their council next week. Marion County, I don't think is going to their commissioners. I think they're just submitting it. At least that's what Austin had told me. So it's basically all three entities. We kind of it's weird. We're going to do like a joint submittal. So I think we're waiting until us and Salem have gone to our councils to make sure that there's not something that gets a monkey wrench thrown into it. We actually had to request a few extensions on that one too, because this was originally supposed to be done a long time ago. Had it extended through to this December, which we didn't get the final report until literally the day before Thanksgiving. So there was not enough time to actually look at the final report and get it to our prospective councils, or respective councils. So anyway, so that is almost done. I think the highlight there is that the scenario planning work really was a first step in moving into our transportation system plan update. And so that really is, once that is submitted, I mean, there's still room for special interest groups to possibly appeal our regional scenario plan if they feel like we're not doing enough. But yeah, so that's regional scenario planning. The next one on the list is the text amendments for parking reform. Some of you remember when we were here and we eliminated minimum parking mandates and we made quite a few changes to our parking section by gutting it. And then I think I told you, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of got a slap on the wrist by the state. And they said, but Shane, you also have to do this. And I said, yeah, but I really want to do that with the CFA adoption because it makes more sense to do that as a package. And they didn't love that answer, but nobody has like put me in jail yet. So that's what I'm still planning on doing with that. So there will be some additional modifications to our existing non-required parking lot standards. It's really in the area of some landscaping stuff and things like that. So that's just kind of it's out there. It was out there last year as well, but I have delayed that for a little bit.
You got a question, Shane?
Yes.
Walk down this road with me.
Okay, let's do it.
We see a lot of construction crews working on corners, adding ADA sidewalks. Where's that money coming from?
Normally that's like street fund money.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I see walkability as a citizen, I see a lot of people walking on the street with either their their dog in their cart or their child.
Sure.
And my thinking is, why aren't they using the sidewalk? A, it's not there. B, it's pretty flippin' dippin' rough. When you start putting those little plastic wheels on it, you know, your eyes start
Sure.
jiggling. And so my question is, when we, as a code enforcement, enforce those sidewalks that are less than desirable or unsafe, that there is a fund that the citizen or the resident that reside, the sidewalk that resides in front of it can tap into. What, and where does that money come from?
Well, currently, the short answer is currently there is not that fund for private sidewalks. The city has a sidewalk ordinance from the 80s that it is the responsibility of adjacent property owners to maintain their sidewalks. And so currently, if we get a complaint or a concern of a lifted sidewalk panel or a dangerous situation, we actually do send a letter out to those owners. Kind of let them know, try to work with them on timing of getting those things repaired. In the interim, you know, try to mark them for safety, put out some cones, barricades, things like that. There is the ability for the city to go in and do the work and then lien the property or work out payment plans. But that's actually an item that the city council has identified as a priority. So I don't know if Councilor Duran wants to speak to that or if he wants me to speak to that. You know, I think the short answer is that there was a work session, maybe a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, on a sidewalk gap and repair program, which has been an identified kind of desire of council. And so working with staff, specifically Mr. Lawyer, who's our Public Works Director, and Adam Brown, our city manager. And I think that's something that is going to be taken up in this year's budget cycle to make a determination on how to create some sort of revenue, or not revenue, but I guess some funding that may be able to stand up some sort of a grant program or things like that for repair. And then there'd be kind of a two-tiered element where some of those gapped areas where there are no sidewalks, and then also just the standard, like, oh, that sidewalk is dangerous because it's popped up and there's a big trip hazard or things like that. So I think, you know, the hope is that there would be a program in the future, but funding is always a challenge on those things for sure. Does that help answer that?
Aye, yes,
Okay.
yes.
And if you don't mind, Chair.
No, please.
The other thing is that it hasn't been absolutely determined, but they're working on kind of rules for how somebody would apply for maybe not complete funding, but maybe half the funds, or a loan, like a low interest or no interest loan, depending on what category they fit in and things like that too. So it won't necessarily be a free-for-all for anybody to apply to get, but it is to try to encourage people to fix the sidewalk in front of their house, especially if we come knocking and say it needs to be done.
I asked Councilor Duran if I want to touch base with Councilor Duran after this. I'm going to change hats and present an idea to him after that he can maybe bring to council.
Great. Yeah, I think ultimately, generally, you know, the way government tends to work is that there needs to be policies kind of created that then drive the program. And I think there's a concept that's been put out and has been started to get working on with the work session that council has had with staff to look at some different things. And I think staff is also working on trying to figure out how and what a program could look like.
Yeah.
So, I think that's one where keep posted on it. I'll keep you posted on it, especially, so knowing it's an interest. It's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, except that I do deal with the code enforcement piece some. So, it's always a little bit of a balance. Great question. Let's say the last one on the CFEC rules is the walkable design standards, set of text amendments. For those of you that were with us, we'd gotten a grant and we had a consultant come and they had kind of proposed quite a few different concepts of ways that we could look citywide to look at making things a little bit more walkable friendly. And it would be specific on the private property side, some things about driveway spacing and building massing, and planning commission actually weighed in quite a bit on that project. Again, because we didn't have a hard deadline to adopt those. We have not brought those back yet. I think, generally speaking, I take my direct direction from the city manager, right? Who takes his direct direction from the city council. You, as a planning commission, clearly have the power to direct staff to do certain things in the planning commission realm. Generally speaking, the city of Kaiser as a whole has not been super gung-ho, I would say, to say, hey, let's do all the things for CFEC that we can as fast as we can, right? We've kind of tried to slow roll it because there's some very legitimate concerns on how those things might
I don't think
impact
it's a
us.
philosophical issue. I literally think we're getting tired of getting punched in the teeth,
I-
right? Like, I literally think that like every single time we've tried to do something right, the state has come back and said, you know what? Just kidding. So I don't think it's a philosophical challenge. It's just like we're just waiting to get the next set of ideas that are going to come across because we're constantly chasing, not even legislation, we're chasing administrative rules and things that are coming out of a state agency that, I'm not speaking of the merit of that, but it just makes it very problematic because it's like, when we did the RCOD 2018, we thought, God, we're really forward thinking. This is a great plan.
Yeah.
We're way ahead of Salem. I mean, I think we were in a great position. Now we're sitting back going, "Well, that wasn't enough. Like, you're going to tell our community after we spent all this time and money and effort to do that. Like, I don't think it's a philosophical thing. I think we're just getting kind of tired of responding. And
For
frankly,
sure.
there's probably way better things that you can do with your time and Dana can do with her time and Joe can do with his time and everything. And it's just like, to me, I let's just get this freaking done because I'm tired of dealing with it. There's not a lot else we can change, that we can affect in terms of, we've done what we can to be necessarily, compliant. And I don't know, Councilor Duran, do you think at this point it's like, just rip the Band-Aid off, be done with it, and then, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. We're constantly getting pushed around and getting more stuff added. And in reality, we make up the rules for this, or to adopt the rules for this to meet the qualifications. And it's all dependent on, we don't have any say in what's going to get done. It's all dependent on what the market's going to bear. So we say this is what you can do and what you should do, but, it doesn't mean that's what's going to happen because the market's going to say, no, we're not going to do that. And we're going to spend our money elsewhere. And that's what will happen if it becomes too complex and too onerous.
I guess my follow-up question to that, Councilor Duran, is from your perspective, if we just said, look, let's just be done. Let's get this in front of Planning Commission, put a recommendation to City Council. Are you all at a position that you feel comfortable with the work we've done here, do you think, where we can say, here's the recommendation, let's get it done? Because I think, it'll get a huge weight off of Shane and Deanna's shoulders, because they don't have to deal with this anymore. And it's not that I'm saying we just need to pass it off so they don't have work to do, but I think that the more we wait and the more we allow the state to kind of keep peeking behind the curtains, I think the greater the liability is at some point where they're going to come back and say, oh, you know what, just kidding. We're going to add this in.
That's going to happen anyway.
Well, I
We're going
know,
to finish
but-
it up and say, yeah, we think we've done as much as we can and as much as we want to do to meet the minimum that you guys are going to force us. And a couple of years down the road, somebody in the legislature is going to make a comment or make a decision, and we're going to have to go back and revisit this again.
Well,
So
maybe.
it's going to happen. It doesn't matter. As I drive down, what is it, Liberty right now, and they're changing all the
Lots that have been empty for 20 years?
no,
yeah.
the cross, or the.
Oh, yeah.
The ramps.
Yeah.
And that's all being done, they change those every time they go to pave.
Yep.
Because right now, it's because of a lawsuit that was done, ADA requirements changed. And so it doesn't matter how much you do to meet the current regulations, they're gonna change anyway. So that's just government.
So do you, again, I kind of wrap that up. Do you think we're at a point where if we said, Shane, bring this back by whatever date's appropriate, let's get it in front of Planning Commission so we get it to council, you think we're there?
I think so. I think, there's,
I want to get this work, I really just, I have a passion for getting this workload off their desk.
Yeah,
Because I think
I
they're
think-
just gonna continue to get, and frankly, with the TSP coming, Transportation System Plan coming up, they're gonna need to really focus a lot on that. I think as a workload capacity issue, I can't in good faith sit up here and continue to play we're gonna hold off and hold off and hold off and let the state potentially come back and keep Neil and Shane and Dina, when I know that he's got the TSP coming up, and that's gonna be a lot of work. And I feel like from a workload capacity issue, that's us being responsible to Shane, making sure that he has the freedom to really focus in, because I think frankly that TSP is gonna be one of the more important plans that we're gonna do probably in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I agree. So right now, you know, Shane and Mayor Clark and I have been on the
Okay.
regional scenario planning. So we've already seen all this stuff, Kathy and I have. So we're, you know, between the two of us can direct the rest of the council that, yeah, we already know this. This is an easy, you know, we've been working alongside Shane on this.
So-
So it's ready to go as soon as Shane feels like he's got it polished enough.
So I'd ask my colleagues, are you okay with that idea of just really kind of allowing Shane to sort of prioritize? Shane, what does this look like? I mean, are you looking March, February, what?
Yeah, so, well, as we go through the list, we've got some fun other things
Okay.
that are coming that are gonna take us some time. So I think I think honestly, the kind of consensus of planning commission that I'm hearing is like, hey, we don't need to wait anymore.
Well, we haven't
So-
got there yet. I want to make sure we
Okay.
get that consensus, but.
Okay.
Are you talking like a
Yeah.
month, 2 month? What are you thinking in terms of turning this around?
Possibly, but we're gonna have some quasi judicial stuff that's gonna go down in the next few months.
Okay.
That's gonna be, because they are quasi judicial and statutorily bound by timeframes, that are gonna take precedent to that. So that's, you know, my guess is, could theoretically be a March, but might be more like a May. Because I think the quasi judicial most likely is gonna be April, just looking at where we're at,
Okay.
so.
So I guess, is that a first half, is wrapping up the CFEC stuff a first half of the year thing that we think would be a good idea to allow Shane and Dina and city attorney to kind of focus on and get ready to go? Is there any opposition to that? And again, we're not making a decision like it's approved now. It'll all come back to us. We'll have an opportunity to sort of tweak if we need to tweak, right? But I feel really strongly about not continuing to kick this can down the road because we're not going to gain any more ground. In fact, I think it's going to create more of a liability for the city if we keep waiting.
Perfect. Okay, the next slew of category, there's some text amendments that staff has kind of identified. The first one is, we've been looking at it for a while now. It has to do with design standards. We have a set of design standards for single-family homes. Those got folded over. It's been triggered by some of the middle housing projects and how we apply certain standards. So we've been looking at some different examples. We have not landed on something that we feel good about as a staff recommendation right now. And I'll say this, we don't feel that our current standards are broken in any way, shape, or form, but we have had to get a little bit creative with certain developers, depending on the situations of how their lot is configured, and specifically corner lots is where we've kind of run into some, oh, this is a little bit sketchy, and we've had some good conversations, and luckily our developers have been great to work with and said, yeah, we want it to look nice too. So we kind of see there might be a little bit of a deficiency on one area, and then there might be a little bit of an overreach in another area. But because of middle housing, we cannot apply any different standard to a big fourplex than we can to a single family home. And so trying to figure out where that balance is. And then on top of that, we were kind of looking pretty strong, and then there's been some other legislation that's comes out more recently that kind of maybe handcuffs cities a little bit more, even when it comes, especially when you're talking about housing, and not having things that prevent housing from happening quickly and affordably. Mr. Grenz is pretty aware of those. He and I have had some conversations about some of those things. So that's the first one on the list. The second one and the third one kind of go together, residential homes, transitional housing. That's been something that has been brought up by private entities. It's also been talked at the council level a few different times. You know, right now there is, the city has some rules in place that speak to what's called a residential home defined by ORS, which is generally 5 or fewer unrelated individuals that live as a family unit, not including caretakers. So this would be like adult foster homes, things like that. There's been also not legislation, but court cases surrounding what we call Oxford houses.
Yep.
And that we can't regulate some of those uses. So I've talked with Counselor Lindsay a little bit about it, but we think it may be time to try to clarify in our code what is and isn't okay, because the case-by-case dance that happens sometimes when users come in and apply for permits and establish something, it gets a little bit weird, and for staff to navigate it, because there's not a great straight answer because of some of the case law stuff around Oxford houses. So that's what that one's about.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
Is it the intent to go away from allowing transitional housing or to codify the allowance?
More codifying the allowance.
Because I gotta tell you, if it's gonna go away from it, you're not gonna get any support from me at all.
No, I think the desire that I've heard in the community and even in neighborhoods, you know, I mean, yes, you'll get neighbors that are concerned, but I think that when that housing product is functioning as it should, it's a great asset to communities, and it's necessary, right? I mean, it's a needed thing.
Does everyone understand what the transitional housing is? So essentially, there's a couple versions, but one of the main versions that's existing here in Kaiser right now is there's an organization that will bring people in off the streets, get them room and board, and in many cases, if they have children, they're allowed to have children, and they work through the process of getting their life stuff back together, driver's licenses, clearing up court cases, you know, working on addiction issues, mental health issues, getting them gainful employment, providing them opportunities to learn home skills and things like that. It is, from the work that I get to do on a daily basis, it's one of the most needed resources we have in the Mid-Willamette Valley. I think that, you know, everybody says, there's a theory about housing first when it comes to homelessness. Well, that's fine, but if you take somebody that hasn't lived in a home for 5 years and you stick them into a home, they're gonna really struggle. And so this transitional housing opportunity is a bridge towards getting out of a homeless situation into something that's more structured. And some of the units, you know, they do have behavioral expectations in terms of no drugs and alcohol and things like that. I will tell you from experience with the local organization here, they've got a fairly high success rate, and the turnover that they've had in terms of the people they've been able to take out of those circumstances has been really, really positive. So when I first heard about this 7 years ago, I was a hard no. I had family members fail out of those types of things, and so to see what they've been able to do, evolve with it, and actually been in those units. I've been to the one down off Cherry, and I've been to the one up in the Gubster area. And they are very, 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 you would not know driving by them that they have folks there that are rebuilding their lives. They're that well taken care of. So I will just, you know, full transparency, that particular organization that you're talking about is one of the reasons why this got put onto our list. Seems easy.
They had an
Knock it out.
opportunity to get some grant funding a couple years ago to do some improvements. And we had to get real creative in being able to figure out how I would be able to sign off on essentially the land use compatibility statements that were being required by the granting authorities, and which I worked with, well, it was Joe's predecessor, Shannon Johnson, our city attorney at the time, and that's where they are operating a little bit more in that Oxford House model. And I think the fine line is that when you get into highly programmed treatment centers, that is a little bit of a different entity and a little bit more of a policy level. Is that appropriate in residential neighborhoods? And so right now, our code is just not, it doesn't do a good job of defining what we think should be allowed and needs to be allowed.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we're looking at, is trying to clean that up a little bit so it makes it a better path and a little bit more of an assurance for those service providers who are trying to do that. The next one on the list is child daycare providers. Some state laws got changed over the last couple of years. The crux of it is there's, what's the word, Joe? Preemption. There's some preemption language in the OARs that right now our current language in our code does not align with the state law. And so the difficulty is it's not that huge of a deal if I don't go and enforce on someone. But if we do get a complaint about a child daycare center being run as a business and a neighbor doesn't like it, which we happened to have this past year too, by the same operator, and then we kind of dug into it and we're like, oh, well, you don't technically meet our requirement because of the way it's written in our code right now. And then we started doing some research. The provider was like, well, they made some rules to the state, so my licensing is different now. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense why the state's not asking me the same questions they used to ask when these came in. And so Mr. Lindsay had to do some, lawyering for me and to kind of get me a formal opinion on what we needed to do. So that one will be coming fairly quickly to y'all, because we do need to make some tweaks to the code to align with that, what we've been preempted from regulating. So that's that one. A brand new one that was like literally just came into my mind was the public zone. This one is kind of, there's no mad rush on it, but I'd received some inquiries about a piece of property in Kaiser that's currently zoned public. It's Old Centennial School up on Wheatland Road, and it's been zoned public forever. And it's kind of an intriguing deal. Somebody was calling, asking questions about what they could do and some of the concepts they were talking about as a possibility. I thought, well, yeah, that totally makes sense. But then looking in the zone code, oh, that's pretty narrow allowances that we allow there. So, I mean, there might be the possibility for somebody to look at a comp plan zone change to do something a little different. But in my mind, the public zone, historically is used for those, truly public uses like City Hall or parks or schools, which also aren't always public, but, and aren't always in public zones, And so I think that's something that may be worth exploring with Planning Commission to talk about what's there now and what we would see. Specifically, one of the questions was about houses of worship. Are those appropriate for a public zone? And that's kind of a semi-public gathering space. And so, anyway, that one is one where, like I said, there's nothing that's of a must happen immediately. And if somebody was really interested in doing something in a public zone, there is a path for them to consider changes. But it definitely put it in my mind to go, have we right-sized our public zone right now? Is there enough flexibility in it that should be there when we look at what the public zone's purpose is? So that one I may be bringing to you all for some guidance and maybe proposing some tweaks to that in the future.
I have a question. Would this be a time to bring up GIMBY? God in my backyard? What I mean is churches or places of worship have the space, the land to request housing for Oxford housing, if you will. Is now a good time, or is there somewhere else we can bring that up and dive into it?
I mean, it's your guys' meeting. Like, we can definitely, whatever you want to do.
In addition, I'd like to ask another question about affordable housing.
Okay.
In terms of the 20-year land use or 20-year plan.
Okay.
Because last month, or as I was the time before, I was not here, but the subdivision on McLeod and Wheatland, there was a housing unit permit request. And so that got my planning brain going in terms of what kind of housing. Affordable housing is, I think, is getting further and further out. I don't know. I know some of you understand how affordable housing works, and it's pretty it's incentive. The developer gets paid on the tail end, and so it's very difficult to get the developers to want to buy into things like affordable housing. I think God in my backyard, they might have the financial resources just to throw the money at it, but I could be wrong. The point I'm going after is that in land use, in ADUs, is there room for those two subjects I brought up?
Yeah, I mean, I think affordable housing is a much different conversation. There's not a lot within the power of planning commission to make affordable housing a reality. When I'm talking about affordable housing, I would say it's affordable housing with a big A. So it's that government subsidized housing, right? Generally, that is, you have to have a funding stream to subsidize it. So that would be at a city level. You know, some cities do choose to do certain programs, or they can incentivize housing in a number of ways. If there's land that cities own, sometimes they make it available to an affordable housing developer, because the affordable housing developers, they're going to get kickbacks from like the state, and sometimes federal funding as well. So, but it's hard because generally private property, and I'm going to be really careful, don't want to be practicing law because I'm not a lawyer, but you know, every property owner has kind of vested property rights. A lot of those are tied to like, what is the zoning and land use allowances for my property? And if somebody wants to develop something that's allowed on their property, generally as the government, we kind of have to let them do that. Now we can require them to connect to utilities and meet our standards that we've established, but we don't really historically have the ability to reach in and say, hey, you can only do this one thing, right? So that I think it's a great question, and it is a great, you know, societal question as well. You know, what I would say in response to the whole discussion around affordability in housing is there's the big A affordable housing that's going to be subsidized. And then there's like what I would call the small A affordable housing, which are some of the things like middle housing is attempting to do a little bit more towards providing housing options for folks that is on a broader spectrum of affordability versus just your detached single family home. And so I think the city's done actually a really great job in providing some flexibility. But again, as Councilor Duran kind of alluded to early, it does tend to be driven by the market and whoever those landholders are. Because they're going to be looking at projects for the most part on what is the return on investment that I'm getting for the investment I'm putting in. And so it is a little bit tricky when it comes to that. And as far as like the religious element, I mean, there is the religious land use, RLUPA, I don't know what that all stands for, but there are some protections afforded to houses of worship in the land use realm that isn't afforded to everyone else. And there has been quite a bit of different state laws that have been passed over the last several years that would allow a house of worship to operate certain things regardless of zoning that might not be allowed anywhere else when it comes to things like providing some housing for shelters and things like that. And so those are already in place, not something we would need to codify because there's already state laws that kind of cover that. Does that kind of answer that?
Yes.
Okay. The last one on my list for kind of the staff identified text amendments is possibly revisiting our AI zone. This is, you know, around we call it the smell zone, the Willow Lake Settlement Agreement. There's been some additional interest, and there was actually some direction given to staff to kind of look into options for us as a city, because we have a large area of ag industrial zoned land out on Windsor Island Road that isn't really serving a purpose for our community a whole lot. And we have some interested property owners trying to sell property right now. So one of the pieces as we've looked at that is that there is a overlay zone there due to what's called the Willow Lake Settlement Agreement, which limits allowed uses. It's a joint settlement agreement with all the jurisdictions because it's a regional plant, so it's kind of complicated to get that really to be changed. And it doesn't seem that there's like a lot of maybe political will to change that, because it could open up the different entities to future litigation that would be undesirable. But because of some of the conversations that have happened at staff levels and at elected official levels, I think it might behoove us to kind of take a look at that zoning and rethink what the industrial type of uses are that are currently there versus what maybe could make sense in that area and could be acceptable to there'd be like the regional, everybody would have to agree to it. It's not actually within our power, but we would have to propose something to see if Salem and Marion County would agree that like, yeah, that could be appropriate in that area. So that's kind of that last one on that list. Don't ask me too many questions on that because that is a non-fleshed out piece. There's just there's some very legitimate motion on a large piece of property that I believe we will probably see some sort of a land use application filed on in this next year. And so that may trigger and push that conversation up to the top of the heap. I just happen to know it's probably coming at some point in this next year. So there you go.
Cool.
The next one on the list, floodplain, Pick'em. The reason this is on the list is right now we're operating under the case-by-case approach, as most of you know. Something that got dropped on us real late in the game last year. It's proved to be really difficult for folks. I've had a few projects that have not happened, little projects that have not happened, like I want to build a detached garage. Yeah, you know.
This has been around for a long time. I remember Commissioner King presenting this at my job, what, 4
Yeah.
years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's great. But we are allegedly getting a lot closer to having a final answer from FEMA and the state and lawsuits working their ways out. At the end of the day, we're going to have to change our floodplain ordinance eventually. It's just, I don't know what we're changing it to yet because they don't know what we're changing it to yet. But we're getting closer. It was supposed to be August and it still isn't. So, anyway, that's just going to stay on the list until it gets done. But again, that's one where we're kind of waiting on the other shoe before we move forward with that.
It's a race between Counselor Duran and I growing a mohawk, or the Pick'em's actually happening.
I love it. I love it. Okay, the next little group on the list I think are kind of exciting. These are some master plan applications. You know, these would fall in that quasi-judicial realm. There is a pretty high probability. There's a 100% probability on one of these. There's a pretty high probability on really all four of them, but I think for sure two of them are going to be happening. First one, Area B, you all approved a text amendment, not once, but twice for Area B, to look at opening up some auto-oriented uses in this past year. I actually have a meeting with prospective developer. Myself and the public works director are going to meet with them hopefully actually next week, to kind of talk, because that text amendment process is, I think tomorrow, it is officially in effect, because that's, I think, after our 30 days. But they are looking to want to put together an application to do a master plan amendment in Area B. So they can kind of start moving forward down that road of trying to figure out if they can make this site work and purchase land from the city of Kaiser. So that's the Area B one. And obviously with the text amendments, remember with changes made a couple years ago, even amendments are coming to Planning Commission first for public hearing. So you guys will be deciders on that. So that's, again, also a heads up. Watch for, don't have ex parte contact. So, you know, as things start rolling forward. Area C, that one's kind of anticipated for the Triangle area. There was a letter of intent for the Triangle that was approved a while back. I honestly don't know where that's at in the process or where that's at, but I know that if something moves forward in that Triangle area, I'm fairly positive that anyone is going to be looking to do a master plan amendment from what was imagined there back in 2015. So I think that one has a possibility, a pretty high possibility of coming. But again, that one we're not quite there yet. It is driven by if somebody wants to apply. The questions we've had posed, or the questions have been posed to me with people who have interest in that area. Every one of them, it would require a master plan amendment. So I think there's a pretty high probability that may be coming before you guys in this next year, maybe a little farther out. I also think that Area D may come back and rethink a couple of the the spaces there, you know, where the hotel's going up and the two buildings that have been finished. The tire store has permits issued, I believe, although I don't think I've seen anything coming out of the ground with them yet. But, you know, there was a couple different pad sites that when they did the amendment, I think one was a car wash user and one was a kind of a undetermined, not sure what they were going to do. So I've had some representatives from the tribes have reached out to me and asked some questions about, you know, we're thinking maybe some different uses in there, something that might go along with, you know, a hotel user, like maybe a restaurant or something that would make sense. And so I said, well, you know the process. You guys have done like 14, no, they've only done like 4 amendments to Area D. It just happened to be like 3 were right in a row. So that's another amendment that's pretty, I mean, that one's the least likely of the 4 on the list. And the last one is the Isla Bay property on River Road. That one will be coming to you. I have applications that I have received. I have received payment for the applications now. I got paper copies of plan sets dropped off to me just maybe Friday. And so that one will be coming before Planning Commission. I am just kind of in the midst of doing a completeness review on that and bringing Public Works and the engineering firm into the fold to go, do we have enough information to process this yet? And so that one, barring completeness, I don't know exactly when we'll be scheduling for the public hearing, but just looking at the calendar, I think realistically, that's what we're doing in April. Because there's some, you know, there's some timeframes that I have to hit. The developer, the applicant is very open to making sure the timeframes work for everybody, them included. So anyway, that one just on your radars. And again, that one is initial hearing, because that's a brand new master plan. We have a master plan for that area. So that'll be a public hearing before Planning Commission. You all will be making a recommendation to council. And so again, just, I mean, and I don't know, Joe can say it better than me, but with those quasi-judicial land use decisions, we have to be careful as a governing body and a decision-making body not to have ex parte contact with applicants or neighbors or those kind of things that talk about merits of an application, because your decision-making needs to happen in that public realm, in that public hearing, based on the facts and the information provided.
With that, and I know we all love watching, and in fact, I don't think have given us the training. We used to get a lovely video from Shannon. But if between now and then, and if we can get that training, I think it would be helpful just to make sure that everybody up here is completely up to speed. I will bring a pillow and a blanket for
Okay,
Commissioner Grants and some of us, yeah.
that sounds like a good idea, actually.
I was gonna say, would it be, I mean, would that be something that you guys would want, like an in-person? Like, should we just plan on
I
doing?
think in person is better. I
So
think
do
that way if there's-
that next month then.
Yeah.
I just feel like if there's questions or if there's clarification
Yeah.
needed, it's better for
Okay.
everybody to hear it and be able to clarify
Okay.
Yeah.
expectations and standards rather than just do it in isolation.
Yeah, no, that's
Because somebody
great.
may ask a question that somebody may not realize is beneficial for someone else.
Yeah. So in
Commissioner
that, I mean, let's just plan on that, if you don't mind, then for
No, I-
the February meeting.
I mean, I'd like to make sure the rest of the commission is okay with that, but I think that just makes sense. It's good practice to hear it every now and again.
No, that's a good point.
February 11, looks like, maybe.
Commissioner Rents?
City Attorney Lindsay, so these master plan applications, any one of them is likely to be an abundant package of material.
Correct.
The agenda and all of that material, we're only going to get notice a week ahead. Would it be inappropriate for us to get on the city's webpage, land use application page, review any of that material
those out?
ahead of time?
Yeah. Yeah, you can do that. It's gonna, here's the one, I guess, caveat to that is if it's currently a incomplete application, and I'm not sure, you don't put them up there until they're complete,
No,
do you?
no, yeah, it would be, so let me help a little bit. I mean, I know exactly what you're asking, and I actually.
We need time. I mean,
Yeah.
It's gonna be a
Yeah.
big ass.
So,
document. We need
once the
time.
application is deemed complete, we will have it posted to the city's
Yeah.
website. We send out requests for comments to neighbors within 250 feet.
Yeah.
There's a sign that'll go up on the property, 10 days prior to the hearing. It's noticed in the paper,
Yeah.
all of that. And I think as long as, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think as long as Planning Commission is looking at those public documents.
Correct.
That I've posted, well, I don't post them on the website. Somebody who's smarter than me posts on the website, but I do tell them, hey, post this on the website. But as long as they're looking at those things,
Yeah.
those are all, because that's all part of the public record.
Yes.
Now, realistically, the staff report will not be ready prior. I mean, it has to be ready a week prior to the public hearing.
Yeah.
And so once the staff report is finalized, we put that up there so that people get the staff recommendation. But all of the application materials and all that will be up on the website as soon as that application is actually deemed complete. And also it will be we'll tell people when the public hearing is happening and all of that.
And you can feel free to look that up and look at that and, try to get ahead of the game. Yeah, and I guess the idea here is the public's right to see you deliberate means that it's like, when you go to the pizza place and they're making pizza in front of you, it literally is that for people. So if there is something that you learn out there that isn't part of that, I mean, that sometimes you even end up maybe sharing that and say, the only thing I know about this that I've also heard, and so I like sometimes you can supplement because that'll be part of the record anyway, right? Like that'll be in the room, it'll be in the packet, and we'll say this is part of the record as well. So it's sort of like, getting early on what's already going to be in front of you. But they'll probably come and supplement with stuff too, and then if you had additional questions and they wanted to set over and add some more stuff, but I mean, really it's about sharing with the public what you're actually deciding or using to decide. So if you got really crazy and went out and did research, people often will say, and I don't mean to do the training 1 month early, but people will say, I went by the site and what I mean, that sort of thing. So
I drive by it every day for the
Yeah,
record.
exactly. And so it's just trying to be as open and as transparent as what you're using to decide, so.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to get time to review the packet.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to augment his question, and I want to add another thought, and then we go to Commissioner King, because she had her hand up before I decided to open my mouth. If, Shane, you find it within your heart to do, and you feel like you want to get that staff report done 2 weeks in advance, especially if the findings are considerable,
Yep.
that would be great. I know that, I'm not asking you to do it, but I mean, if it's something that's feasible, right? Or if the application is so great, and you're like, I got 4 findings, whatever, I mean,
Applicant typically writes it for you, right?
100%, yeah.
it comes on the back of the $100 bills, yeah. The other thing, and this is one of the things that irritates me the most about land use. When a neighbor comes in and says, Shane, I need to know how to comment on this, do you help them?
Yeah.
Okay, is there something public facing? Because I think that because what we hear is that, here's my feelings.
Yeah.
Feelings are not a measurable way to create findings, nor are they speaking directly to the applicable substantive criteria of the code.
Yeah.
And so is there a public facing thing that can exist where it says, look, if you feel like you need to meaningfully participate in this, and you are at least for the 250 square feet or 250 feet property owners, I would just love to see that, because in the last 12, 13 years that I've been dealing in the land use space, that is something that doesn't exist. It does not exist for Tammy to be able to come in and say, I don't like this and I can't tell you why. Because she doesn't, and I'm not, saying that Tammy doesn't understand land use, but it's really hard for the layperson to
Sure.
get in without going and hiring an attorney. And by that point, it's
Yeah.
like, they're hundreds of thousands, well, no, they're thousands of dollars down the hole, and they may not be able to get it. So it's just one of those things for me, being able to actually allow the whole, from my perspective, the whole reason of bringing these master plans in, the whole reason of doing this was not to penalize applicants, but it was for the benefit of the neighbors to allow them in this very limited capacity to be able to have a say in what was going to happen in the areas with which they live. Sorry, a little bit of a long dissertation, a lot of emotion there, but it's something I feel really, really passionate about because it's the hardest thing for a regular person to participate in.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I mean, I know, our request for comments forms, they do reference the substantive criteria. We do try to help people like understand that. It is hard because most of the time, a really long time now, I'm getting old, but most of the time there is an emotional element. And so, I take pride personally on when we have people that comment and come in, and when we have public hearings for subdivisions, it's a lot of the same, in the industry, people call it NIMBY, not in my backyard, right? You have a lot of people that come in that have concerns, and so we do take the time to try to explain to them, and honestly, the staff report is exhaustive and long and does explain what we're basing our recommendation on and what we have the ability to do. It's a little bit hard because I can't coach folks, just like I can't coach an applicant and say, hey, you should change this and make it better so I can support it. Or I can't coach a citizen and say, oh, hey, if you look at this, and I can't do that, but we do try very hard to make ourselves available. I've already been talking with, in this case, the McNary neighbors, several of them. I think they've got me on speed dial. Sometimes they know things before I know them. So I think it is hard, and obviously the other piece is that there is a little different set of criteria for a master plan than a straight up partition or a subdivision. There is, I won't say subjectivity, but there is some subjectivity in some of the way that the criteria is written. There is some policy and judgment that will be expected that Planning Commission will have to make in hearing the testimony, and that ultimately council will have to make in rendering any kind of a decision on these master plans.
And I'm going to ask you one favor.
Yeah,
10 days is the minimum.
yeah,
Can we do better,
I'll try.
please?
I'll do what I can.
Okay. Appreciate it. Commissioner King.
Just so you know, sometimes it depends greatly on when I get comments back from other affected entities and agencies. We will write much of the staff report that we can ahead of time, but I don't control engineers or county surveyors or other entities.
But I think this is going to be theoretically probably one of the most impactful decisions that this body is going to make in my tenure and probably for the council. And so I just want to make sure that we do, I've heard from the council that getting public participation is a huge thing. We're stopping the whole Parks Master Plan thing because of a lack of participation in their opinion. And so I just really want to make sure we're hitting goal one for a reason,
For sure.
Sorry. Commissioner King, I'm going to shut up.
No worries. I guess this is for Shane and Mr. Lindsay. So the Isle of Bay, I am familiar with it from a previous job. However, that was almost 2 years ago, and so I don't know if it's the same or not, but I was familiar with just their preliminary plan.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that was on record.
Yeah, and when this comes in front of you and you're deciding, you have to say basically, whether or not you have any sort of actual conflict of interest or potential, and then whether or not you have any ex parte contact. And so at that point, you just say, and I did run into initial stuff 2 years ago. I mean, just put it in the record at that time. Yeah,
for sure.
perfect, yeah.
Commissioner Hauser.
Thank you. Area D, I had two points of two questions. The first one is looking at our agenda. I don't see urban forestry on here, or their lack of. I know that there's individuals that are city employees that are doing some footwork around counting trees. And that's a start, but that's something that I would like to see more energy put into, and how do we put more resources into, here it comes, having an urban forestry program. I know that's a mouthful, it's a very large mouthful, But I think that, no, I know for a fact that we can give thanks to those trees because they give us life, plain and simple. You don't like it? No, I'm sorry, that's the way it is. And so that's something that I'd like to see. In addition, as far as clarity goes, revealing the truth, when I applied for this position the second time, I had sat in those chairs and I was asked a number of questions. Those questions were based upon what I know of community developing, what I know in my degree from Portland State and Urban Studies. And so therefore, there were my opinions based upon the questions that were asked of me of those individuals who were on that committee to be on this committee. Okay, those were my opinions based on those questions. Okay, if you want to get further into it, downrange, we can. Okay, and, oh yes, Area D, you gotta love them. And what I mean is, if you don't know Area D, that's the tribal land, that's Grand Ronde and Siletz, that's herding cats. I know for a fact, by personal experience, that you can, good luck with that.
We didn't try to get a walking path. What are you talking about?
Oh, well, what I was referring to is, and you can help me on this, Shane, is I live in East Kaiser, and each spring, summer, and fall, you see all these 4x4s with 35-inch tires trying to figure out how they're going to get their trailer and their truck parked along Kaiser Road so their kids can go play softball and baseball. And so what I had done was I had approached the mayor and with the idea of talking with Grand Ronde and Siletz of having a footbridge over the railroad tracks into Area D to help ease that parking strain that small area is only going to get busier. And so what little footwork I did, the facts, is that I was cut off by the railroad company, plain and simple. And so I handed it, all paperwork I had, I handed it to the mayor. I haven't got back with her for a while on this, but that's something that I think that would be nice to see as well, is how do we address that in terms of parking? I know it's a gravel, but once we start putting dimensions in there, we're gonna start bringing that down even smaller. That's what I have.
I will just say on record, I think that the footbridge concept is definitely outside of Shane's pay grade, because yes, the railroads are, notoriously, yeah.
Well, and I want to take a second. So actually, Tammy last night came to the Parks Board and actually asked about the ability for people to get from the hotel to the Little League fields, Florida. And unfortunately, it's just one of those things that it's nearly impossible to get done. I mean, Frank and I worked on it. We had lots of conversations, and it was a dead stop when it came to the railroad. So it's not. And then, even if it could happen, what was the numbers? It was like $14 million or some craziness.
Yeah.
To even, because you either have to go way above
Yeah.
or you have to go under, and both of them are so cost prohibitive at that point, you almost can't even do it.
I
And
think
that
they
was-
make you build 30 feet above them.
Right,
And then, we had to go under them for part of Kaiser Station.
right,
And that's the easier sort of way.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's the tribal government at the time was very favorable, if I remember correctly, because we were just using that as an additional parking area, but yeah, it was a no-go, so.
Yeah, that's hard. And
Those
then
will
they
be
make you pay for that easement perpetually.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not just the price of what you're doing, but then, which is an outrageous ask usually, but then perpetually you'd probably be paying up to about $25,000 a year to have it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, the last thing on my list before I ask you all of what is on your list that we need to kind of add in by consensus is the TSP update. And it was alluded to, talked about earlier, it's going to be a big project. It's probably going to take us about 2 years. That's kind of what TSPs run, 18 months to 24 months. We are on the path. We've been on the path for a while. Nothing
6
moves
years.
super quick. The kind of we have a consultant selected, we have a scope of work that's been worked out. There was a BOC, which is, I don't know what the B stands for, something of costs, that was worked out between ODOT and the consultant, because ODOT's paying for the TSP update, and it's granted money, right? And it hasn't all been finalized yet. I know it went to the Department of Justice for their review. I actually got an email today that asked for another clarifying question of myself and the consultant on some items in the scope, just some clarity on length of meetings and things like that. So it's all moving forward. I am hoping, I mean, I put in here, I might have shot myself in the foot, but I'm really hoping that we'll have an IGA in place by the end of February, so we get this thing kicked off and moving. I was kind of hoping it'd be around the first of the year, because that's what I thought it was going to be, but it isn't.
It's New Year to August, you're fine.
Right, I mean, and until I've seen them in person, I can tell them Happy New Year as well. Yes, call back. I did it. But yeah, so that one, like I said, that one is going to be a big process. There'll be, yeah, that it will be before Planning Commission at least a few times, and to have meetings and talk about things and whatnot. And so then, like, the last thing on my list and we have this other second page, which is kind of the ongoing stuff that's floating out there, is a kind of a generalization. But really, the last thing on there is any other items that Planning Commission wishes for us to put into the mix and bring forward things you see necessary or needed.
My observation is, I think we've got a big lift this year. I think with the potential of multiple master plans coming down, wrapping up CFEC, if there's low-hanging fruit stuff that has to come in, great. With that, we've had this conversation in the past, and Shane, you didn't bring it up tonight. I'm a little shocked you didn't bring it up tonight. But I think we need to be willing as a commission to be responsive to the needs that Shane has, which means if he says, hey guys, to meet 45 days, we might need to meet the first week or the last week or whatever else. I would just ask that the commission be willing to consider that. As that comes, Shane, if you can give us appropriate notification, and you're usually pretty good about that. Like, usually tell us a couple months out if you think that something's gonna align funky or whatever. But, also, right, like, if in our capacity in a quasi judicial fashion, right? Like if we get to a point where we're working with an applicant, I also want to be thoughtful about them, especially if we get a variance or something else that comes in, where if we need to turn something around fairly quickly in order to reconsider something or do whatever, that we also kind of consider that. So we've changed the workload on ourselves to be responsive to our neighbors. And I think that the tasks personally you've got here, it's a lot. It's going to require a lot of attention and a lot of focus here. But I would, if we can squeeze a couple things in here or there,
Yep.
Like the transitional housing thing,
Yep.
if there's a way to, I'm not mad at trees. If we want to talk about trees and see how we can encourage more trees in certain zones, great. I think that's worth it. But that's just kind of my thought. I think trying to add anything on your plate right now would be tough. That's just my personal opinion. I'm trying to get CFAC off your plate.
Sure.
But I'd like to hear from Commissioner Witters, because he hasn't said nothing tonight except for one thing. What do you think? You got anything special you want?
No, I think the list is pretty complete. It's, it would be nice to get the CPAC or whatever.
Make sure your microphone's on. Otherwise, the sound guy comes back and says, hey.
Sorry, I thought it was on. No, I think the list is complete. It'll be nice to get the CFAC kind of wrapped up, and because we have been talking about it for quite a while, and it feels like it's a lot of wheels spinning. So that would be nice to actually get that wrapped up and wait until they tell us that we're doing it wrong. But no, I think everything looks good on here.
Commissioner Scruggs, I know you got one thing you want to talk about.
By the way, Shane, thank you.
Double check your mic.
It's supposed to be on, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not. Push down. There you go.
Biggest thing for me right now is the urban growth boundary. I know it's coming in front of council and you've got a discussion on it next week. I very much would like to see how that's going to work and how that's going to advance. And if you're looking for a volunteer, by the way, I'm more than happy to get into that. That's my wheelhouse. That's the stuff I really enjoy. So I look forward to seeing how that's going to develop.
Commissioner Harris, you got any re-attacks?
Say again?
You got any re-attacks? I mean, you've brought up a couple different things. I'm just,
Correct. I'm pretty satisfied with what I brought to the table this evening.
perfect, thank you. Commissioner King?
I mean, I'm sure I'm gonna think of things as soon as I walk out the door, but I think that, with what we have on the table and, you know, with what planning has, we'll have a hefty late winter, early spring read ahead of us for some of the applications, coming through and tasks that we, have assigned ourselves and or been assigned. So I think this is a good list, and I will be extremely proud of us to get through it this year.
I agree.
We won't.
Vice Chair?
Well, I guarantee we're not getting through the TSP. That's been on this list
Well, that has a date in it.
We're closer though.
Yeah.
We're closer every,
Closer
just like we're older every
closer is
second,
good.
we're closer.
I do have something that I would like the commission to consider, and that is changing the process for subdivision applications. Specifically, I would like to take the first decision-making process away from the hearings officer, and I would like to task that with staff. The reason being, subdivisions are, by law, judged only on clear and objective standards. We don't need a lawyer that we pay, I assume by the hour, for public hearings to determine if an application with no variances, no adjustments, anything like that, meets the clear and objective standards. Shane already does the staff report, already does the recommendation. I think that having staff do the final decision appealable to, right now, I think it's appealable to council. And whether we want to change that to the commission or to the hearings officer or to council, but I think that very easily could be a staff level decision.
Do you think that would streamline things?
I do.
Do you think that would make things more appetizing for prospective developers?
I think that it would remove a lot of,
Time.
not necessarily time, a little bit of time, probably 2 weeks off the land use process, because that would take away one hearing. But what tends to come up in public testimony from interested citizens is generally nothing relative to the relevant
merits of it, yeah.
the relevant criteria. My experience is that it just tends to obligate developers to agree to do things like fence neighboring properties that there's no code requirement that they have to. So it adds burdens. My opinion is it adds burdens to applicants.
Do you think can we engage in this conversation?
No, I'm just kidding. Yes, go ahead, please.
Is, Commissioner Grants, is that driven by Governor Kotek's, okay.
No, the requirement that residential housing applications are based on clear and objective standards, those have been state law for probably almost 10 years by now.
I mean, they just get more and more serious about what it means to be clear and objective.
Right.
Yeah.
If you have to convince anybody that you can do what you think you can do, it's not an objective standard. So I trust Shane to judge applications based on clear and objective standards.
What do you think, Shane?
I don't have a strong opinion on it one way or another. I think it definitely is a policy kind of question for planning commission to consider. I was trying to sidebar with Joe a little bit and ask him a question, and I just don't know off the top of my head, not a lawyer. Obviously, historically, Kaiser's always had a public hearing for subdivision approvals. And my question was, is there a requirement at the state level that you have to have a public hearing for a subdivision? Commissioner Grenz is shaking his head. No, I just don't know off the top of my head, right? So I think that would be the one piece. I think from that policy level, I mean, I think that would be the question mark on what level of engagement is appropriate as far as planning commission or city council is concerned. I mean, ultimately, if we were going to make that move, I'd have to be looking at drafting some text amendments, right? Because right now, the process is defined in the code as this is the process, this is what you do. So we would need to move that process into being more like, I guess, probably like a partition process. So it'd be a different type of land use decision, which could be as simple as, text amendments, move that subdivision word over here where the partition words are. And, of course, the review criteria for a subdivision is quite a bit more extensive than a partition, but they're very similar in nature. I mean, it's still the same kind of things. So, I mean, there would definitely be we would have to go through a future text amendment process to move that direction. I mean, I guess a couple things that I would say is that if planning commission, generally was like, yeah, we like this idea, what we could do as staff is we could try to I'll commit Dina since she's not here tonight. But Dina and I could work on.
Say that a little louder.
Nope. And hopefully she's not watching from home tonight.
Don, can we make sure you note that in the, yeah.
No, but that would be something we could try to come back. I mean, I don't know if I can get it. I don't know if I can do it by then, but if Joe's going to be giving us a planning commission training next month, I may be able to get some at least, research done and information provided to planning commission that could further that consideration of if you wanted to direct staff to move forward with making changes. I can try. I'm kind of busy right now, but we can try really hard to get some info together, if that's helpful.
I mean, I don't know that being on that kind of a timeline is necessary.
Yeah.
But I think it will take, maybe not work off of your desk, but it'll take meetings and hearings off of your calendar. So.
My only pushback is, does it still offer a public comment period?
Yep.
Okay. I think if there's still a public comment period and there's still the requisite notifications, and Shane can take that into consideration in his final recommendation, what I don't want to have happen is somebody comes in, this is want to do a subdivision, and Shane's like, yep, not a problem, you're done, here you go, and then all of a sudden there's a subdivision in somebody's backyard and they're going, what the hell just happened? Well, I understand that.
Well,
But, go ahead.
I was going to say, I apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt. And I think that is what I was trying to get at from that policy decision, which really is clearly within planning commission's wheelhouse to make as far as making a recommendation. And ultimately, council will be the one that has to decide if that's an appropriate path. I think it is difficult because I've been doing land use for a long time, especially Kaiser land use, my whole adult life. And it is very difficult because a lot of times people don't like what's happening on their neighbor's property. The one value I will say to a public hearing process, and it doesn't work for everyone, but there is it carries a higher weight of being heard than submitting a written comment or talking to Shane on the phone. And not always, and again, I'm not arguing a position at all, so I don't want to say, hey, this is a valid point, but that is, I will say, because hey, on the selfish side of things, I appreciate less night meetings, for sure. Yeah, let's do less night meetings. That sounds good to me. I have been, for the most part, when we do subdivision hearings, we'll have as few as, actually, I had a subdivision hearing where no neighbors showed up. My most recent subdivision hearing is the first time that's ever happened in my career. There's normally at least 3 to 6 people and sometimes more like 30. It just depends on how hot it is. And for the most part, in the last few years, it's been around a dozen. And a lot of times it's the people that are complaining about the same things or they're concerned about the same things. And what ends up happening at the hearing is the hearings officer ends up oftentimes, because I'm pretty open, hearings officer will be like, Mr. Witham, are you willing to speak to that? And so I have a conversation with the folks that are testifying because they're asking questions about this and that and the other thing. And depending on who the applicant is, a lot of times applicants are really good about sharing what their plans are and whatnot. And so sometimes people leave that space feeling heard and feeling a little better about it. If they were unhappy to begin with, they're still unhappy when it
The thing
ends.
about it is though, I'm gonna go to you in a minute, Commissioner Winters. If we changed it and said staff decision appealable to planning commission, theoretically, they would still get their day in front of planning commission court. I just made that up. So that still exists in that space, right?
Sure. Could also just bring all subdivisions to planning commission.
That's interesting thought. Commissioner Winters.
I think what I wanted to mention was actually a lot of what you said, Shane, but I think, and I'm not trying to argue a side here or anything, but I think the benefit of the hearing, whether they're emotional arguments or not, is it's transparency and people feel like they're heard, even if they don't, if they're not satisfied with the outcome. I mean, if we're talking about a subdivision, we're talking about somebody's getting at least 4 driveways next door to them. And so that's a very emotional, topic for some people. So I do see the benefits, but, if we did, again, I'm not trying to argue this whole thing now, but if we did have that, like you said, the option of, putting appealable to the planning commission or something like that. But now that I say that real quick, I'd be afraid that it'd be, you get your subdivision approved and suddenly every neighbor is appealing. I think that would really slow down the whole process, actually. So I don't know. I'm just throwing my thoughts out there before they escape me.
But in this case though, I think the same could theoretically apply if they went to a hearings officer because they could appeal it to council. So those same level of hearings could still, but I don't think you get I don't think everybody gets, it would be party status for a hearing, right? So you'd have multiple people that comment on the record retain party status and they could participate in a appeal to the next body, right?
In order to get standing, you'd have to either write a comment
Right.
or appear at a hearing, or in certain aspects, we've given standing, like we've offered standing to our neighborhood associations, but if it happens in their region.
And this is purely anecdotal, but I would have to imagine if somebody went to an original hearing and testified, they're probably less likely to appeal than if they felt like they weren't heard at all.
Well, but part of that I think is just my guess is if somebody's gonna be a good neighbor coming in, they're doing a subdivision, they probably gonna have a good conversation with the neighbors, right? I mean, that's just good business, I would think. Jeremy doesn't do that, especially in Salem, but I'm just kidding. I don't know, it's an interesting thought. I don't know, maybe we'll put it on the if time allows type thing.
Just wanted to throw it out there.
What do you guys think, if time allows?
I agree. I think it would be a good discussion to have.
Cool. Less hearings for Shane, maybe.
I feel like Commissioner King might have some opinions on that.
Do you? We'll speak.
So many opinions. No, I think it's a great discussion to have. There's definitely a whole array of different equations to approve a subdivision, whether it's, a hearings officer, appeal to council, staff, appeal to planning commission, or straight from planning commission, appeal to council, whatever it might be. So I think that having a discussion on that, those options and the reasons why, but also I think that it is important to make sure that we are still keeping that goal 1 of public involvement on the forefront of it, because it is really important. And in my experience, behind the counter, with subdivisions and contentious land use cases, just having, you know, that opportunity to be heard and to say, I'm concerned about X, Y, and Z, you know, that's really important. And now, you know, as a neighbor in the community, I think that's wonderful that we still, you know, that we can have those options and things like that. I mean, if my neighbors were gonna put up a subdivision, I'd absolutely want to comment on it. So I think that needs to be, you know, really just pushed up front to make sure that we're still giving those opportunities, for the neighbors. But I would absolutely love to have that conversation.
Yeah.
It'll be a long meeting for sure. I guarantee you.
I'm gonna be sick that day, so Jeremy has to run it. All right. So, any other items on these lists for the good of the order? All right, this is great. No, you were done. No, go ahead, Shane.
Sorry, just really quick, that last page was kind of the ongoing tasks, which I only wanted to bring that up because one of those was alluded to earlier. You know, the first one on there is talking about employment lands and things like that. I think we're anticipating probably applying for a grant for an economic opportunity analysis update in the next grant funding cycle. We had last grant funding cycle, we did not get that grant. The UGB discussion, I think actually the open house may have been, we may not be doing an open house on the UGB. I think that might have got shifted around because of some other work session-y things happening. So keep your eyes, Commissioner Scruggs, on our city calendars. But there is on the calendar of events to happen in the near future was a work session with council, kind of with the UGB update. And I think actually maybe with the strategic plan stuff as well. I think that was kind of maybe folded together, but I think there's still a little bit of a question mark on what date that's going to happen because of a couple of other moving parts for work session items. So, and then the other piece, and we won't even talk about the last one because that one's just, I don't know, that was on there from last year. But the housing supply piece, housing needs analysis, which is really what kind of generally drives the discussion about UGBs. With the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis, the ONA stuff is kind of changed. Shifting sands, that's what I like to live in. But what I will say is that we will be looking at doing a new, what's called now a housing capacity analysis instead of a housing needs analysis. But we are on the hook to do a updated housing capacity analysis along with a housing production strategy in 28 and 29. So actually the DLCD, our regional rep had reached out to me this past spring prior to the grant funding cycle to kind of let me know that you're welcome to apply for grants. It's a very competitive process. Your guys' deadline is now 28, 29, so we would anticipate you would apply for a grant in the 27 biennium. So it was kind of nice. Like, I mean, it was like, oh, okay, save me some work from not having to, you know, spin my wheels. But so we will be going through doing an HCA and an HPS, but it's a couple years out right now, just the way that the things move
Right at the tail
around.
end of the TSP. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's going to be, and I mean, it is what it is. But the other thing I didn't put on the list on purpose, because I don't like to, you know, buy trouble, but there is also a fair amount of changes that has worked through our legislature and in the past cycles. I think there's quite a few rules that are going to be, I believe they're implementable in 27. And so for those of you that have been around when we went through middle housing, we're going to have some more changes that we have to make.
I'm so shocked.
Yeah, so anyway, I didn't even put that on the list because I have not spent enough time with that gargantuan amount of legislation to figure out exactly what we're going to have to, what we're absolutely required to change. But just so you know, there will be additional changes we will be making to some of those items.
So at what point do you start getting paid state planning director pay because you're an employee of the state?
I don't think ever. So, anyway, but thank you for the conversation, it was very helpful, and, yeah.
Talia, are you wishing at this point you did art commission? Well, cool. Tell us about things. It's your opportunity to tell us things on the youth liaison report. Whatever you want to tell us. What are things exciting? Make sure your mic's on so I don't get yelled at by the sound guy.
Well, I just came from a rehearsal for McNary's production of Chicago, which
You get to work
will-
with Zoe. I love Zoe. Known her for 30 years.
It will be like starting in like 2 weeks. Well, not this week, but the next week. And then this weekend, many musicians from McNary's orchestra and band program will be going to the OMEA honored band and orchestra groups. So that's pretty exciting. And yeah, so a lot of us at McNary are preparing for finals, which are coming up at the end of the month. So that's pretty stressful right now. And yeah, I mean, there's basketball and wrestling going on, and everyone's just preparing for college applications, which the deadlines are coming up this month. So
It's cool to hear that McNary is doing cool things with like band and orchestra, because band and orchestra was like a third and fourth string thought when I was there many years
yeah.
ago. So, yeah, that's cool.
We actually, our band won second at state a few years ago. So it's getting pretty good.
I'll tell you the story about when I was in marching band a long time ago, but I've never played an instrument in my life. True story.
Wow.
And I was not on the flag team. I was not on color. Is that what it's called?
Color guard.
Oh, that's right. That's what you did. Counselor Duran.
Well, I really didn't have much to say, but when Commissioner Hostler brought up the can of worms about the underpass, I just had a thought. Has anybody thought about doing a path down from the one side of the underpass for the parkway and using that as the crossing under the railroad tracks? It's ODOT property, I believe, right? So has anybody thought about that? Because it's pretty close. I was just looking at the map on that. So I don't know, I was laughing at him bringing that up because everybody thinks about that. It's like, oh, if we could just bring that across the railroad tracks. I mean, I've thought about that for
There's dozens of
years.
trains a day that go on that thing.
Yeah, well, there's what, two regular trains and they're not even daily. But yeah, there's no way we can afford to do that. The only way we got the underpass at Tepper, I think, was we had something to trade.
Right.
So that was, if we do, what was it, I don't remember what it was, but it was something that we
got rid of that, because we got rid of the aggregate crossing that was existing.
right, so that was the only reason that they let us do
Yeah.
anything different is because we actually got rid of a crossing,
Yeah.
so they allowed us to do the underpass, so. But if we could talk to ODOT about doing a path through their property down from the water tower under the overpass and back up, it's right across from the parking lot. So, I mean, it'd probably add 300 feet or so of a walkway going down and back up. But it's already an underpass. They can't say no, or the railroad track can't say no.
Yeah, I welcome any good idea because honestly, we've been talking about this internally a little bit, is people crossing the railroad tracks,
It's gonna happen.
and it's a crime. Like, so you're encouraging also criminality. I know
crime
that
to
sounds
cross railroad
crazy,
tracks?
but
It's trespassing.
It's trespassing and it's upgraded to a Class A misdemeanor because the railroads have protections. And they have their own police force, which is weird too.
So like all those times I was putting quarters on it back in the day allegedly,
Wow. You were committing a Class A misdemeanor?
fantastic, I'm a criminal.
Yeah. But
all
but no, so I mean, we wouldn't
Statute
want
of
to
limitations
encourage,
is a long time ago.
we wouldn't want to like willy-nilly encourage people for safety reasons, but also literally because you're sort of inviting people to do,
Right.
because least, path of least resistance oftentimes people will go to, so.
I envision us having to put a fence up on our side
Yeah.
Yeah.
to keep people, You know, right now,
Yeah.
it's a little wire fence.
Yeah.
But we may have to put a 6-foot chain link fence up
Yeah.
because we're gonna have a lot of people going, well, I can just get right over
But
there.
the setbacks on those are ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it has to be super far away from the tracks, if I
I,
remember right.
the answer on that is it depends, but I'm shocked that they're not making the hotel do it. Because they almost always, if there's any sort of development, they're like, you're gonna not have our property involved, so.
So I was just, you know, thinking about that as well. What if we go, you know, if people go the other way and go to Shamala Road, that's a long ways to make that crossing. You know, if they decide, I don't want to drive over there because there's no parking and they're staying at the hotel,
Yeah.
walking that way. But if they can save, you know, a half a mile of walking.
Because if they
but
go towards,
they go south.
Yeah.
And down under that overpass and then back up, it's probably 300 feet on each side.
yeah, right?
I have a question. The old road that's, well, an old road.
It's Old Ridge Drive that used to come out right next to the railroad tracks.
It's a straight shot. You could get cars there. Well, I don't know about them big 4x with the 35s, but you get my point, is it's not being used.
Well, I don't think we own that anymore. I asked that question.
Yeah, it's been vacated when the Area C master plan came in.
Yeah, so it's owned by, is it the developer there that owns most of that property adjacent?
Yeah, I think there's maybe 3 property owners.
Yeah. So I thought about that. Why don't we add that as just street parking, you know? But yeah, we kind of gave that away. So that was, I had nothing, and then I thought, well, that came into my head, and I thought I'd throw it out, so.
Kind of fun when you choose to talk, Counselor. Since Commissioner Lopez isn't here, I'll take his role on the 20th. If you want to come along to see how that goes, the report to the council. Yeah. Couple things quickly, Chair's prerogative. February 4th, there's a guy retiring from the city of Kaiser, Uncle Bill. Super excited, 36-year employee of the city of Kaiser. Shane will be the next one to be the next longest tenured employee for the city of Kaiser, but, well, yeah, Bill's been here 36 years. I remember when he got the job, and my cousin bragging about how awesome his dad was because he started digging ditches with backhoes and he's worked his way up. So it's really cool. So February 4th is going to be a retirement ceremony here at City Hall. It starts at 4 o'clock. There'll be kind of a formal program at about 4:15. It'll be casual or formal camo or something like that is the dress attire. Or casual camo, I think is what it was. You know, just really encouraging folks to, if you've had the opportunity to work with the Public Works Director, you know, take the time to come by, say hi, sign a guest book. You know, I talked about it a little bit last night. I think getting the opportunity to work with him in the capacity on the Planning Commission, but also on the parks for the last, you know, decade or so has been, as his nephew, the honor of my lifetime, but to see the level of professionalism and dedication that Bill Lawyers brought to the city of Kaiser. And, you know, I remember as a kid spending the night at the house and him getting phone calls 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and having to go take care of some crisis. And, you know, that's just the caliber of human and dedicated public servant he's been for the city of Kaiser. And so if you want to go to that, I would just encourage you, February 4th, 4 o'clock, program formally at 4:15. So he deserves a really, really good send-off, in my opinion. So I am biased, but you know, that's okay. And then secondly, that weekend on February 7th, will be the dedication of the Kaiser Gold Star Family Memorial Monument. You guys have heard me talk about that a little bit. We got the flagpoles up this last weekend, and it was really, it was kind of humbling at one point. I did a video, and you know, because I really couldn't lift. I had had a wisdom tooth out the week before, and watching the group of volunteers stand up the first flag, I got kind of chills because if you don't know the story of Woody Williams, he was at Iwo Jima, and to see that flagpole go up, and I know it's not completely analogous, but it was kind of like, wow, this is something really special and stuff. So all 6 of the flagpoles are up, and I got scouts going out this weekend. We're going to be doing some bark dusts and things like that, and So that's going to be February 7th at 11 o'clock. It'll be the formal dedication. We've got some great speakers coming to talk about that. I'm just really thankful for everybody that's participated in that and helped raise the money. And it's going to be a fun but somber day. So if you can make it out there, February 7th, 11 o'clock. If you got any questions, let me know. I can help you out with it. But we're going to do a little reception to follow after that. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So.
Looks really good, by the way.
Yeah. Well, during the windstorm, it was funny, we had, they had poured the concrete the day of the windstorm. And so Mark Callier, if you don't know Mark Callier, you need to, texted everybody and said, hey, by the way, we're staying at this thing overnight. And there's one rule about working with Mark Callier, you don't typically tell him no. And so then we're trying to create a who's going to stay at the site overnight bill. And so he was there all day. I went there from about 7 to 11 or 11:30. And then Kevin Dial showed up, and he was there during the brunt of the windstorm and said he was in his little Honda CR-V and it's shaking like crazy. And, at one point, a cone flew, and they're one of the long, skinny, candle-looking cones, and it just made a little tiny scuff in the concrete. And so obviously we have to joke about, Kevin making his mark on the complex, but, yeah, that was fun. In fact, when I was there, it was beautiful. It wasn't raining much. And then literally as Kevin pulled up, I got out of my truck to go say something and just the sky opened up. And in that 7 seconds I was out of my truck, I was drenched. It was awesome. So anyways, there we are. First planning commission meeting of the year. Are we ready to wrap this dude up? You said short one. Psh. Anyways, okay. Well, we'll stand adjourned at 7:44.